All right. Welcome to the Exchange Hybrid Deployment session. My name is John Katane. I'm a Fast Track engineer from the Fast Track Center. Everyone here know about the Fast Track Center or still not familiar with it? Okay, so we provide free onboarding assistance to Office 365 if you've got 150 eligible licenses. So that's what we do. So if you've got 150 or 100,000 licenses or more, feel free to reach out to us. We would either contact you within 30 days. By the time you purchase your license, we'll give you a call. Or you could go to your Office 365 portal. So there's a link there when you click on, I think it says something like, I need help with moving to Office 365. You could request for assistance from there as well. And then we'll set up the kickoff meeting and walk you through the process of how to onboard to Office 365. So that's what the Fast Track. Yes, sir?
Very quickly, does that apply to education customers?
Yes, there are some eligible licenses for education. If you've got, I believe, a premium or personal license, that's not included. But for that will be included in the. There's a list in our website where it talks about all the eligible licenses in there. Yep. So there's about 30 licenses that's eligible, 30, more than that, that's eligible for Fast Track. Cool. All right. So let's talk about Exchange Hybrid. Yep. It was working a while ago. Okay, let's do that again. All right, so hopefully this one works. There we go. All right, for our agenda, we'll talk about why do we need to deploy Exchange Hybrid. There's different ways to move to Office 365. So we'll look at the different scenarios. What are the advantages of doing hybrid deployment? And then after that, we'll talk about the prerequisites of going hybrid. And then we've got this new hybrid configuration wizard. I'll walk you through the process of setting up the hybrid deployment using this new wizard. I'll do a quick demo as well so that you could see the experience and how easy it is to set it up. And then to cap it off, we'll go through some lessons learned in the field. So we've got our deployment best practices and some things that you need to be aware of to make sure that you move to the cloud as smooth as possible. All right, so why Exchange Hybrid? We'll answer this question by looking at what the experience is like if you don't have hybrid deployment, right? So if a user has been moved to the cloud, the user on-premises in Exchange would be seeing in the address book, would be seeing that user as a contact, an external contact. Not much information there. There's no title, there's no phone number, there's no address. And some users would get confused with that because it's a different experience when the user is on-premises and when the user is moved to the cloud. When someone looks up the FreeBSD information of that user as well in the cloud, it wouldn't have any information because there's no sharing. There's no federation sharing with what's in the cloud, what the calendar is in the cloud and in on-premises. And that goes vice versa as well. So if the user is in the cloud tries to look up a calendar on-premises, there's nothing there. And then if someone tries to send an email to a user in the cloud, that mail tip would come out, right? So it might confuse some users because it would show there, it's more of like a warning. Hey, this recipient is outside your organization. Even though that it's in the same organization, it's just moved to the cloud, it would give that warning. With hybrid deployment, that's all gonna change. We could see here in the contact card, it's exactly the same as a user on premises. It would have all those information there. Users on premises could share FreeBSD information with users in the cloud and vice versa as well. And that mail tip goes away. So everyone will think that even if the user has been moved to Office 365, the experience would still be the same. The way they collaborate would be the same. The second reason for going hybrid, and this is more for the IT professionals, for the IT department, right? Most customers wants to do a pilot deployment just to get a feel of how the users would be experiencing when they're moved to Office 365. So some customers would just move 10 mailboxes in Office 365, kick the tires, see how things are going, test the third-party application, see if everything's still working. And then if they're not happy with that, they could just offboard those mailbox back into their on-premises environment. So that gives them a bit of a safety net as well. So it's easy to roll back and move those users back into the on-premises Exchange environment. All right, so what are the benefits of hybrid? So there's different ways to move to Office 365, right? So the first one is cut-over migration. Cut-over migration is the easiest because there's no need for extra servers. There's no need to set up DearSync. It's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is publish your migration endpoint, put a third-party certificate in there, and then away you go. The downside of this approach is you'll have to reconfigure your profiles on your Outlook client, and then that's gonna download the OSTs again. So when you do the cut-over migration, Monday morning, if your users, you've got 500 users, for example, and they all have 2 gigs of mailboxes, that's all gonna come down and synchronize Monday morning, and that's gonna take a lot of network bandwidth. Another downside of this approach is it's a big bang approach, right? So you cut over everyone in your organization. There's ways of staging it, but generally it's, everyone goes to the cloud on this specific date. So the next approach there is stage migration. Stage migration gives you the opportunity to do a batch approach. It does require DearSync. The only downside of this is it only works with Exchange 2003 and Exchange 2007. If you've got Exchange 2010 in your environment, or 2013, then you won't be able to use this migration approach. Same with cut-over migration. You'll have to reconfigure the Outlook profiles. Either the users could do it manually, or you could run a script to change the Outlook profiles, and that requires the OST resync as well. So just make sure that that's all considered in terms of the network consumption once that cutover has been done. The advantage of this, not like the cutover migration, you could do it in batches. So you could create a CSV file and then move those users across in different batches. And the third approach is the hybrid deployment. So with hybrid deployment, there's more requirements. Similar to Stage, you need a DearSync server as well. You could have Active Directory Federation if that's required. The good thing with this is it automatically updates your Outlook profile, so there's no need to change that manually. You could do batch approach, you could do offboarding as well. So similar to what we've talked about with the initial pilot users, you could move them back easily to the on-premise environment. And you've got that rich coexistence where users on-premises and in the cloud would pretty much see the same experience. They would collaborate the same way. So we could see there's two bars. At the top is the deployment complexity, right? So from left to right, the deployment becomes more complex. Cutover is easier because there's no servers required, there's no directory synchronization is not required. But as we move into the right with hybrid deployment, we need these additional components in there. But if we look at the end user experience at the bottom, we could see there that it's more complex for the end user if we use the cutover migration because they have to know their new username and password, for example, in the cloud. If they had to reconfigure their Outlook profile, they had to do that before they could move to Office 365. But as we move to the right with the hybrid deployment, the experience gets better for the end users. So I guess this will be key if you're trying to decide which migration approach you want to do. It would all depend on your priority. So if your priority is you need to get those mailboxes as quick as possible, you don't care about user experience, that would be cut over migration. If user experience is more important than anything else, you could buy extra servers. You need to buy third-party certificates. You have to test it. You have to do the pilot deployment. Then it's just a hybrid server for that. Cool. All right, so let's look at the anatomy of a hybrid deployment. So we've got here our Contoso data center. We've got Office 365 here in the cloud. Anyone here from Contoso? I actually have a customer called Contoso. They're based in Thailand. So I was actually surprised that Contoso, I'm not sure if they were able to register that Contoso.on Microsoft domain. I doubt it if they've got that, but there's actually a Contoso customer. So the first component there is directory synchronization. So we've got our AAD Connect server. This is what I call the Highlander server because there can only be one, right? So you can't set up another AAD Connect server, and that's just one server there. If you want redundancy, you could have a cold standby, but you can't run two AAD Connect servers side by side. And the reason for that is the synchronization happens every 3 hours, right? To set up the AAD Connect server, it takes about 5 minutes. So if something goes wrong, if you have a hardware failure, all you have to do is replace that. If it's a virtualized machine, then all you have to do is just replace that and reinstall AAD Connect. But you could have that cold standby on a different data center if you wanted to have a faster recovery time. So AAD Connect connects to your on-premises Active Directory and synchronizes to Azure Active Directory. So there are 3 main reasons why you need AAD Connect. The first one is it synchronizes your on-premises object into the cloud. So before you can move mailboxes in Exchange Online, in Office 365, you need to make sure that that object there is synchronized because the email attributes are attached to our user objects, right? So that's the first thing it does. The second thing is those information is going to be used by our users in the cloud when they look up the global address list. So they'll have all the information in there, and they could see the title, the address of that person on premises because those information are synchronized in the global address list in the cloud. The third reason is for password hash synchronization or password hash sync. So because we want the password of the user to be the same on premises and in the cloud so that they don't have to remember a different set of credentials, we can synchronize that as well with AAD Connect. All right, so the third component is Active Directory Federation Services or Active Directory Federation Server. This one is optional. If you really want true single sign-on, or let me rephrase that, if your security policy requires true single sign-on, then that's the only reason that you'd be deploying ADFS. With ADFS, you do require some additional infrastructure. Our recommendation is to have at least 4 servers. Okay. So 2 web access proxies on the DMZ, and then 2 ADFS servers in your internal network. You could split that into different data centers, but if you enable ADFS and if the ADFS server is not available, no one can log on to the service. So that's how important it is, right? And it's optional. So if you really, really need it, then go ahead, deploy it. But if you don't, you could skip that. Okay, so, and the third and the most important component here in our hybrid architecture is our Exchange hybrid server. So we support Exchange 2010, Exchange 2013, and Exchange 2016. So these are the servers that will be talking back to the cloud. to Exchange online protection and Exchange Online. But your mailboxes can be sitting on an Exchange 2003 server or Exchange 2007 server. Anyone here who's still on Exchange 2003? Yeah, we've got a few too. How about Exchange 2007? Yeah, about 3, 4, okay. 2010 for the rest? Good. All right, good. 2013? Yep, we've got a few. How about 2016? Yep, we've got 3. Oh, that's good. Cool. So what's important here is the N-1 rule, right? So if you're on Exchange 2003, the hybrid server can only be Exchange 2010. So the coexistence rule for Exchange is you could coexist servers within that N-2 rule. So if you've got Exchange 2003, you can coexist with Exchange 2007 and Exchange 2010. If you're on Exchange 2007, you could coexist with Exchange 2010 and Exchange 2013. If you're on Exchange 2013, or 2010, then you could coexist with up to 2016. So remember, take note of that N-2 rule. Now, another key component here is the endpoint there for mail flow. So we need to make sure that mailcontoso.com is published to the internet, and we've got a third party assigned to that server. So self-signed certificate is not supported for that. And then we've got our send and receive connectors. Some customers would have an edge transport role as well. So aside from our standard hubcast and mailbox roles in 2010, we've got the edge transport role as well. So because our supported configuration for Exchange is you cannot install hubcast and mailbox on a DMZ. It has to be on the same network as where your Active Directory servers are. But some customers, they don't want to allow a direct connection into their internal network. That's why they had to deploy that edge transport role. So if you've got the edge transport role, there's just an extra step when we set up the hybrid configuration to make sure that we point it to the right server and we've installed the certificates on the edge transport servers. All right, and the final consideration here is centralized mail flow or centralized routing or centralized email egress point, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, if you've got, say for compliance reasons, you've got a disclaimer solution that's sitting in your on-premises environment, and you want everyone, including mailboxes in the cloud, to have that disclaimer, added to their emails, then you'll have to force centralized routing. So all messages going out of your organization, be it on-premises or in the cloud, it has to go through your on-premises egress point. So if you've got DLP, if you've got disclaimer, if you've got other solutions there that you want all your emails has to pass through, then you'd have to enable that. Cool. Any questions so far?
So you made that edge server. You're drawing, it's pointing kind of to internet, but edge needs to be used. Edge server?
Yeah, edge server, yep.
Through it?
Yes, correct, yep. So the routing has to go, if you've got edge server, it would be coming from EOP to the edge server, going into your internal, if you've got a disclaimer solution, for example, going out to the internet. Somebody?
Yeah, same edge server will send, receive, and then send.
Absolutely, correct, yep.
The Exchange Online provides disclaimer, right? Through hub transport rule?
Yes, you could create hub transport rule, but some customers would have an existing one already, and some of them would want like Active Directory query, for example. Like it would automatically put the position in there and all that the transport rule doesn't support. So yeah, there would be some customers out there that would have that requirement. But yeah, that's a good point.
Then wouldn't you use Azure AD for same thing? So you can still send through both, having same setup.
If you're sending from,
But Azure AD should have same, what you just said, internal AD query.
so if you've got, if you've got users in the cloud and it's gonna query Azure AD, then that third-party solution should be able to query Azure AD. So aside from the on-premises AD, it should be able to get that in. I guess most solutions would just query the on-premises AD because that would be the authoritative, that would be the source of truth. Everything is just being synchronized to Azure AD anyway, right? So it will have that information. So, cool. All right. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Can edge transport be replaced by a third-party solution? Third-party SMTP?
Great question. Yep. From a Microsoft supportability perspective, that endpoint coming from EOP to Exchange has to be Exchange 2010 SP1 or higher. If you've got a third-party solution there, like IronPort, for example, that's not supported. That's not supported by Microsoft, but it may be supported by the third-party vendor. The reason for that is because we don't know what's happening in between, right? We don't know if IronPort is changing anything in the packets or if with the certificates as well, how they're offloading the certificate. It's more of like a man-in-the-middle attack that compromises the end-to-end security of hybrid deployment. So that's the reason why Microsoft doesn't support it, but if your vendor supports it, then yeah, go ahead. And I've seen that work. So some customers have IronPort specifically. They were able to make it work, but Microsoft doesn't support it. It's a third-party product, right? We don't know what's happening between EOP and Exchange when someone's intercepting the traffic in between. Oh, yep,
Sorry,
at the back.
so you guys are talking about spam filters, or like for example, we've got our Exchange set up, and we've got message labs in the cloud that just intercepts all the emails that we receive, and filters them, and do the antivirus. So
Yep.
how would that make this whole?
Yep. So if you've got Semantic Cloud, was it? Yep. Yeah, if you've got Semantic Cloud, that's in the cloud, right? So you've got an MX record probably pointing to Semantic Cloud, right? You've got your SPFs configured and all. So, and that's a good example of centralized routing as well, because you want everyone, even users in the cloud, to be inspected by Semantic Cloud, right? So from cloud, going in, going back to cloud. Yeah, yep. So that can be done. With centralized routing, it would just go back, look up that MX record for your Semantic Cloud, and that goes out through that. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no worries. Cool. All right, let's move on. All right, do you really need ADFS? Do you really need to invest on 4 extra servers just for single sign-on? So these are the reasons why you need ADFS, right? So if you want true single sign-on, then that has to be ADFS. With just directory synchronization, it's called same sign-on. Even though you're using the same credentials, same username and password, there's 2 different directories that's storing those information, so it's not a true single sign-on. If you need client access filtering based on IP address or IP subnet, so for example, this block of subnets, you don't want them to log on to your service, or this block of subnets, these are the only block of subnets that you want to log on to the Office 365 service, then that can only be done using ADFS. If you've got time restrictions, so in your on-premises Active Directory, if you've got users who can only log on between 9 to 5, for example, then in that case, you need ADFS so that the authentication needs to happen back to your on-premises Active Directory. If you need self-service password change, you could use ADFS for that. This feature is also available in Azure Active Directory Premium. So I guess not really an excuse to deploy ADFS. If you want to immediately block a user, so if someone compromises your security or something, and you want to immediately block that user and restrict access, then you need ADFS for that. With directory synchronization, it does the synchronization every 3 hours. So you've got that window the 3-hour window, so it wouldn't be immediate. For password changes, it would be about 2 minutes. But if you want to disable an account, then that will be, it's not instantaneous. So if you need that, then that can only be done with ADFS, because when you block that user, all the authentication goes back to on-premises, and that user won't be allowed to log on anymore. If you've got a third-party multi-factor solution, you need to use ADFS for that, and that has to integrate with ADFS. If you just need multi-factor authentication, then you can use Azure Active Directory Premium for multi-factor authentication. And then the last one is if you're using Forefront Identity Manager or Microsoft Identity Manager now, you need ADFS because FIM or MIM doesn't support directory hash sync. Oh, password hash sync, sorry. All right, so what are the prerequisites for a hybrid deployment? You need a tenant, obviously. You need to add your domain. So you need to make sure you validate the domain. You've added the TXT record in Office 365 to prove ownership of the domain. And that's all good to go. You need to make sure that you have the third-party certificate for that endpoint, for that Mailflow endpoint. And that needs to be assigned to the SMTP service as well. We'll go into that in more detail later. Okay, we need to ensure that Exchange is properly deployed. Auto-discover is published to the internet, so that's available from the internet. We've got the endpoint, we've got the certificate. Mailflow is working on premises, so before we even introduce hybrid deployment, we need to make sure that everything's working in the on-premises environment. Ensure that it's a supported configuration, so that's the N-2 requirement. We need to make sure that what you have is a supported Exchange configuration. And then we need to make sure that directory synchronization is activated on your tenant. So if you go to the Office 365 portal, there's an option there to activate directory synchronization. And you've got the Highlander server installed on premises. So you've got AAD Connect installed, up and running, doing the synchronization. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we use the hybrid configuration wizard to set it all up. Manual configuration of hybrid is no longer supported by Microsoft. All right, so let's have a look at the hybrid configuration wizard. So a bit of history here. Hybrid deployment was introduced in Exchange 2010 Service Pack 1. It's about that thick of a documentation. I've done a few deployments using this, this documentation, and it took me at least half a day to set up hybrid deployment. Normally, it's about a full day, sometimes more than that, because I'll be spending time configuring, testing, troubleshooting, and then troubleshooting, and then troubleshooting, and then troubleshooting. So it's really hard. It's error-prone. It's difficult. There's no validations and all. So that's the beginning of it. And then Service Pack 2, we've introduced the hybrid configuration wizard to make life easier for consultants like me and for customers as well. So we've simplified the namespace requirements. Exchange 2013, in Exchange 2010, the hybrid configuration wizard is MMC based because the Exchange Management Console is MMC. So when you set up hybrid deployment, you have to add the Office 365 organization and then run the hybrid configuration wizard from there. With 2013, the Management Console or the Exchange Admin Center, I don't know why they keep on changing the names of the Management Console, but the EAC is now web-based, and it's the transport configuration has been simplified, mainly because in Exchange 2013, there's no more hub transport role, right? There's no separate hub transport role. It's just the client access and the mailbox role. And then with 2013 SP1, we've added support for multi-forest, multi-organization exchange. And we've added the the role that's always late in the party, the 2013 Edge Transport role in there as well. And then with CU5, we've added support for OAuth, mainly for our customers in in China. So Gallatin is Office 365 in China, by the way. And then Exchange 2013 CU10 and Exchange 2016, we've introduced this new hybrid configuration wizard, which is now called Office 365 Hybrid Configuration Wizard. And it's no longer running as part of your Exchange installation. So it's now running in the cloud. I'll go through that later as well. So this is our new hybrid configuration engine, or how it works now. So we've got our Exchange Admin Center there. That's our entry point. So we log on to our on-premises Exchange. We go to our admin console, and then we click on the hybrid link. And that goes now to the cloud. So again, this requires Exchange 2013 CU10 or Exchange 2016. If you're using the old version, then EAC would just go to a local version of that hybrid configuration wizard. It goes to the cloud, it downloads the latest version of the hybrid configuration wizard, and then it goes through the different questions. So what's your desired state, right? So do you have an edge transport server? Do you want centralized routing? Where do we install the send connector? Where do we install the receive connector? So it captures the desired state, and then it logs on to both Exchange Online and your Exchange on-premises environment, and it captures the current state of your environment. So it gets all the accepted domain, the servers that you've got, if you've got Federation Trust already configured. So it gets those information, compares that with the desired state. So can I accomplish the desired state based on the information that I've gathered in your current environment? If everything's all good, it would execute the configuration changes using PowerShell scripts, and that's going to update your on-premises Exchange and Exchange Online. Yep, question, sorry.
Don't you, I mean, as part of the prerequisite, you're going to have to do add the secondary SMTP domain like such and such on Microsoft.com.
No, not anymore. Good question. The hybrid configuration wizard will be doing that for you. So your email address policy is going to be updated by the hybrid configuration wizard. It's going to add the contoso.onmicrosoft.com as a secondary email address.
Okay, so the wizard itself will do that.
Yep.
for us.
Yep.
And also, you got to add the SPN. You have to change the SPN of every user to their primary SMTP address.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of stuff we have to go through.
Yep, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yep, not anymore. Yep. So yeah, so it's really simple now to do the hybrid configuration wizard. And back in the day, yeah, you have to do that. In fact, there was a time when you had to do, when on Microsoft wasn't used yet as a namespace, you had to add a service.contoso.com. You have to add the email address policies. You have to add the SPNs and also all good stuff. Yes?
So all authentication set up automated now with Exchange when I had 2007 and 2013 on-premise.
If you have 2007 and 2013 on-premise?
2010 and 2013. So previously I had to manually run the whole configuration, which has been good.
Yep.
Is it automated now?
It's automated now if you're using your Exchange 2013 as your hybrid server. And that's where you're running the hybrid configuration wizard. Yep, it's automated now.
If we're in that coexistence role, in case we're halfway through the migration,
Yep.
using 2013 as the migration server,
Yep.
would you recommend checking we've got CU10 and actually switching, rerunning this a new hybrid configuration wizard, or just leave it how it is?
Yeah, just leave it how it is. So the old hardware configuration wizard is still supported. If you're running it on Exchange 2010, it's still supported by Microsoft. You don't need to upgrade to Exchange 2013 CU10 just to use the new hybrid configuration wizard. But if you're already on Exchange 2013, or if you've got that as your hybrid server, might as well install CU10. Yep. Yep, Jill?
You mentioned that manual configuration is no longer supported for the hybrid configuration with the steps.
Yep.
If you were doing things like adding a couple of new
Yep.
Would that be supported, or would you encourage?
You'd have to rerun the hybrid configuration wizard. Yep. Yep. So once you've run, I'll show it in the demo because I already run I already configured my hybrid deployment. Instead of configure, it would change to modify. So you just have to run the wizard and yeah, add those servers in there or remove the servers or whatever you want to do.
It's not gonna, it might not run a percentage of the command list that it would usually run in the background. It would just run the ones that it needs to.
Correct.
update.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Would you typically run up another Exchange server to run as a hybrid server to run this visit on? Or?
Great question. I've got a slide for that. Yeah. Okay. We'll go through that later. Yeah. Anyone else? Cool. All right. Let's move on. All right. So these are the common questions, right? Some of this has been asked already. So will I be able to run it on Exchange 2010? No. You'd be using the old hardware configuration, hybrid configuration wizard. It's still supported, like I said. So that would still work. Will I be able to run it on 2013? You need CU10. Can I upgrade from Exchange 2010 to a newer version? Yep. You could introduce an Exchange 2013 server in your organization and run the hybrid configuration wizard from there, and you get this new experience. Can I opt out? I don't recommend you opting out, but you actually can with Exchange 2013. There's a way to do it, so there's a command line for it. I'm not going to tell you so that you don't use it. But with Exchange 2016, there's no opt-out. So this is going to be the future. Everyone should be using the new hybrid configuration wizard. Do I need to add additional URLs? So whatever is in that article, lists all the IPs and in URLs, that's exactly the same. There's nothing to add in there. So if you've got all of those configured, you're all good to go. Will running the new hybrid configuration change any of my settings? Of course, yep. If it doesn't change any of your settings, then it's broken. It has to change, right? The on-premises environment needs to have that federation configured. You need those send connectors in there. You need to have that org relationship with Exchange Online in there, right? Okay, so what does it look like? So I'll show some screenshots here. So this is an example where the hybrid has already been executed and it's been configured. So you've got that modify button. Prior to setting it up, it would be a configure button, I believe. But so that's the welcome screen. This is new in this version. It does auto detection. So it would look for the server in your environment that has the latest build, the latest version of Exchange. So the first thing it does is it checks if that server that you're running the hybrid configuration wizard has the latest version. If not, it would look at another server in the same site, and then it would check if there's any other servers there that has a newer build from that server that you're running it from. And then if it can't find any servers there, it would go cross-site, cross-Active Directory site, and it would look for an Exchange server there that has a newer version. But all of this you can manually override, right? So most of us would probably be overriding this because we need to specify which servers we want to be our hybrid server or the server that will be running the hybrid configuration wizard. There's a drop-down here as well. So if we want, if the tenant is in China, for example, we could select 21V here, and it's this drop-down list. For the rest of the world, it would be just Office 365.
So you're running this from the cloud tenant from Office 365 portal?
Correct. So I'll show it in the demo later, but our entry point would be our Exchange Admin Center. So we log into our on-premises Exchange Admin Center in Exchange 2013, and then there's a link there for hybrid. Once you click on that, if you've got CU10, it's going to download the application. So it takes about a few minutes, to a couple of minutes, I guess, to download it. And then it's going to run this. So these windows here are from that application that's being downloaded. So some changes in the way we input our credentials. By default, it's going to use whatever your logon as the on-premises credential. And then you input your global your global tenant admin for your Office 365 tenant here. And then after that, it's going to connect to both on-premises Exchange and Exchange Online. And then it would look for a shared namespace. Remember, in a previous slide, having the domain validated is a prerequisite for this. So we need to make sure that if we're using contoso.com as our accepted domain in our on-premises Exchange, we need to make sure that contoso.com domain is validated in Office 365. Otherwise, it won't show up here. So you'll get a blank drop-down list. It won't show you any options because it can't find that shared namespace in there.
That you have to update all the TXT record for all the accepted domains you have?
Correct, yeah. So when you validate your domain in Office 365, you'll have to go through that process. So you add the domain, you add the TXT record into your DNS to prove that you own the domain, and then you select what services you want to enable. If you have Skype for Business, for example, or Exchange, then you'll have to go through that 3-step process in Office 365 to validate your domain. Yep.
Do you have to actually have the SIM fully configured before you run this?
Correct. Yep. Yep. So before you even run the hybrid configuration wizard, you need to make sure that DirSync is installed, it's running, and it's working as expected. Yep. All right. So I think we've talked about that. So that shared namespace has to exist. Another change here is if you've used the old hybrid configuration wizard, when you copy to clipboard, it's going to add additional information in there. So I think it's domain name, colon, and then the token string. A lot of customers actually paste that into their DNX TXT record. So it's not going to work, right? Because Exchange Online would just be, the hybrid configuration wizard would just be validating that token string, but not the whole, I believe it's domain colon token string. In fact, 15% of the errors that we found from users is because of that. They pasted the whole string. So we've changed that here. So when you copy to clipboard, it would be just that token string that's going to be included there. So another thing that we've added is we've added this note here. So if you keep on, so you've added the string, right? And then you keep on clicking verify domain ownership, verify domain ownership. Office 365 would see that as a denial of service, and you'll get locked out. I think it's 24 hours or 48 hours. So just make sure that, bring a lot of patience when you're setting this up. And yeah. In fact, there was another presentation about this, and they found out that some consultants are actually intentionally doing it, right, so that they could go home early. So, all right, so let's look at the hybrid configuration here now. So the default option is to go through the client access and mailbox server, right? This is the typical, most of the customers would be having this. Some customers might have an edge transport there, so you'd have to click on that second option. And then the tick box there at the bottom is to enable that centralized routing. So if you want centralized routing because you've got anti-spam, antivirus on premises or somewhere in the cloud, then you'll have to do that. All right, so, and then there's a step as well to select the servers that will be configured as the send and receive connectors. Okay, so certificate. So a lot of issues actually happen with the certificate configuration. So with the new version, we'll look for the certificate. And I guess the prerequisites for that, it has to be a third-party certificate. It's assigned to the SMTP service. It's installed to the right server. So some troubleshooting tips here for the certificate, because this is where we see a lot of issues with our hybrid deployments. when you see a blank screen there in that previous page or on this page, it's maybe because you have a different certificate installed on your mailbox server and client access server. It has to be the exact same certificate for it to work. Take note that mailbox server is for the send connector, client access server is for the receive connector. Again, third party, proper SAN assigned to the SMTP service should have a private key. Another common issue, I've seen this in a couple of my customers. The certificate requires certificate revocation list validation, the CRIL validation, right? And it's using port 80 to go to the certificate provider. It goes to the VeriSign CRIL or the DigiCert CRIL. Some customers actually block their port 80 or internet access from their Exchange servers. So when you look at the certificate, there's a red error there that it cannot validate the CRIL. Therefore, the hybrid configuration wizard would pick that up and it would tell you that that's an issue. Yep.
Can you use wildcard certificate there?
Yep, you can use wildcard. So you could either use SAN certificates or wildcard certificates.
Speaking of proxy, the last time I ran the client where the servers had no internet access directly, I had to go through a proxy. I have to do a lot of tweaks to make sure the hybrid configuration works.
Let me guess, it's a bank? Is it a bank?
Similar.
Financial institution. Yeah, it's pretty common for financial institutions. Some customers would be doing that as well. For this one, it would be exactly the same. Because the CRIL validation, for example, that's inherent to the certificate, right? The hybrid configuration wizard can't really do anything about it. It has to validate itself to make sure that it's a certificate that we can use. So it would be exactly the same. So Exchange servers needs to have internet connection, and that's all listed in that URL IP address TechNet article. Yep. Good. Okay. So these are our namespace. So this will be our endpoint. So this is where Exchange Online Protection or Office 365 in general is going to route back to your on-premises environment. We need to make sure that this is accessible from the internet via port 25 and port 587. So that's SMTP and TLS. Inbound, and the certificate is installed on this endpoint as well. All right, and then the final step there is to do the actual update. So one thing that you'll notice with the hybrid configuration wizard is at the bottom left-hand corner there, there's a give feedback. For every page, you could provide a feedback. You could put your star rating in there, put in your comments, put your email, add the screenshot, say, for example, if there's an error. And our engineering team actually takes this seriously, right? They look into the feedback and how it can be improved. In fact, we've got a long list of feedback that we've implemented. We've updated the tool mainly because of that from the customer feedback. At the end of it, there's the general feedback. So aside from page by page feedback, we've got the general feedback, and again, it would have that star rating and comments in there as well. All right, so this is a big improvement in this version. So in the previous hybrid configuration wizard, sometimes we just see an error code. It doesn't make sense. It's very cryptic. We have to look up, an internal Microsoft database or call Premier Support to basically find out what's wrong with the setup. So now we've added a lot of detail in there. Like for this one, Exchange was unable to communicate with AutoDiscover endpoint for your Office 365 tenant. And then if there's additional information in TechNet, you click on that, and that's going to take you to that article. You can open the log file from here as well. So when you click on that, that's going to take you to the log file folder, and you could do the further investigation there. Another cool thing here is there are links to your on-premises and online PowerShell. You don't have to log on anymore because we've got all those information already, right, at the start of the wizard. So when you click on that, that's going to open the PowerShell, and that's log you onto your tenant or to your on-premises environment. So very, yeah, very useful if you want to do some testing or troubleshooting. All right, so improve logging. We're now adding a lot of stuff in the logs, right? So, like for this one, for example, would be a good example for the certificate. We'll get all the Exchange servers, check all the certificates, and identify if those servers are valid or if it's still expired, if it's self-signed, if client authentication. But we've got all those information. It's easy to troubleshoot if you've hit any issues with the hybrid configuration wizard. All right, so I'll do a quick demo. And hopefully this one works. Any questions so far? Yep.
Do you have a list of ones approved certificate providers?
No, we don't. We can't really.
Are they all supported?
Yeah, they're all supported. Yeah, they're all supported as long as it's not a fly-by-night company, I guess. Yeah, we do support every one of them. Some of them we're partners. We're working directly, but we're not in a position to make any recommendations. Yeah, GoDaddy's pretty common, right? Yeah, that's one of our partners, GoDaddy and DigiCert. Yeah. All right, so okay, looks like I got disconnected from the Wi-Fi. Always happens when you do a demo, right?
No, it happens normally as well.
Sorry?
It happens normally as well.
Normally, yeah, okay. Yeah. I might need the. Yeah, I'm having some issues with the Wi-Fi network. Good thing, I did a video recording of this because I was kind of anticipating that there's going to be an issue with the network. So yeah, it's not even showing up the access point. Sorry about that, but trust me, this is a live demo. If I could drag that in there. And hit play. All right. So that's the entry point there. We go to our Exchange Admin Center, we click on Modify. And then if you look at the URL there, it's connected to the cloud. So it's downloading that hybrid configuration wizard application. And then you click Run. And then we go to the welcome screen. And then that's where the auto discover happens for the server. We've got those two options in there. Again, you could do a manual select if you want to. And then here, you're already logged on in your on-premises environment using the credentials that you've used. You just need to log on to the Office 365 environment using your global admin account. And that's going to connect to both on-prem and Office 365. And this is the actual speed, by the way. So I've recorded this. I did some editing on the downloading part because it takes about a minute or two to do it. But the rest would be actual speed. No magic, no video editing on those other pages. So that's the receive connector. So it's going to ask for the receive connector. And then it's going to ask for the send connector, the server where you configure the send connector. It checks the certificate as well. So it picks up, this is a wildcard certificate as well. I'm using a wildcard certificate here, so we know that works. And then just to show everyone the certificate that I'm using there, so it would be that last one there. So if you do a get exchange certificate, you need to make sure that S, which is SMTP, is assigned to that certificate. So that's the certificate there. How we're going with time? Okay, and that's the SMTP endpoint. And then when we click on update, that's going to do all the changes on premises and in Office 365. Sorry?
Saying you were up really early to do that.
Yeah, no, well, I would like to say that, yeah, but that's actually in Azure, so that's not my local time. All right, so that's our demo. And of course, this is not going to work anymore. So the next part here, which is the last of our agenda, is the lessons learned. So based from our customer deployments, I put together some best practices here. And if only it would work. Let me just do this. All right, we'll do it the old way. So best practices. First one is concurrent migration limit. By default, it's 20, right? So I was working with a customer about a couple months back. Yeah, it would be about 3 months. And they were complaining that the migration throughput is not good enough. So they've got 5,000 mailboxes, but based from their calculations, based on their mailbox sizes, it would take them months to move everyone across. And then the first thing I asked is, did you change the concurrent migration limit? So previously it was capped at 100. We've changed that now. So you could go up to 300 mailboxes that's being migrated concurrently. So the question here is, should you increase the limit, right? So there's 2 considerations here. Number one, do you have sufficient bandwidth to be able to move, 300, I don't know, if you've got 500 MB mailboxes or 10 gig mailboxes, you need to make sure that you have sufficient bandwidth to do that. The second consideration here is, can your on-premises server handle the load? So because the migrations would take up some resources, right? Some CPU, some IOPS on your storage. You need to make sure that you have the capacity to do that. And then once you're sure, then, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have some guidelines on that?
Great question. The answer is no. It's a trial and error process. So what I would normally recommend is start with 20, right? And then slowly increment it, move to 100, move to 200, move to 300. And monitor your resources. See if there's any performance hit on your network bandwidth and on your on-premises servers.
Is that per 10 or per endpoint?
Per endpoint. Yeah. Yeah. Was there a question in the back? Sorry? Oh, good. Cool. Yes, sir?
You didn't talk much about the user experience, but we've had problems in the past with the OAs not redirecting correctly, and they promise it's fixed in every CU, and it still never was. Where's that at the moment? And also auto-discover. Should the auto-discover be on-prem or on the cloud? Because it keeps screaming, I've got a DNS error.
Yep. So let's talk about the OWA first. OWA today should be doing the silent redirect. So if my mailbox has been moved to Office 365, it would automatically be redirected to Exchange Online. So there's no changes there. It would be seamless to the user as well. That's how it should work. So the first thing that you need to check there would be the DNS settings. Just make sure that everything's in place and everything's working as expected.
Even if the on-prem user goes to their Office 365 portal, opens mail,
Yep.
you get something went wrong.
Okay, yeah, there would be an issue there, but
Should work.
but should work. Yeah, I've seen it work. Trust me.
Isn't it depend on the auto-update the virtual directory settings on the OAuth?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. If you're changing the virtual directories on premises, so if you're changing the default setting, like by default it would be /OWA. If you're doing something else, you're redirecting to an IIS server, which you're doing as well, then yeah, that could break it. But by default, if everything is, as it was when you installed it, it should just work. And the second part was with Auto Discover. So Auto Discover should be pointing to your on-premises environment, right? So you don't need to change that while you're doing the migrations. You do the cut over once you're finished with it, and point that Auto Discover into the cloud. Cool. All right. So how do you change it? So you go to our Exchange Admin Center. Under recipients, there's the migration endpoint. So this is per endpoint. And you click on edit. That's kind of hidden as well. So you have to make sure that you click on that 3 dots there. Click on edit, and that's that one there, maximum concurrent migrations. All right, so another thing that you need to consider when doing hybrid deployments is the 150 MB message size increase. So by default, it's 35 MB, right? So the largest message that you could send or receive in Office 365 is 35 MB by default. But some customers would have larger attachments or would have multiple attachments, and they can go beyond that limit. You can change that now, and the limit is 150 MB per message. So to do that, you could either do it from the Exchange Admin Center, do a control multiple select if you've got multiple users, or just select a user. Or you could use the set mailbox commandlet if you want to use PowerShell.
Do you know where that actually makes the changes at? When it comes to message size restriction, there are a lot of different places you actually can make the change there.
Yeah.
You can make org change, and there's just send
The
change.
connector, yep.
So even the AD site connector change
Mm.
to take effect.
Mm.
So do you know where that actually makes?
So this is for everything. So once you change this,
Right.
well, it's actually per user. So once you change it, that's going to take effect for that specific user. The global rules, or the global settings, would be already configured to 150. So you just need to change the user setting.
And also, previous, because I'm a PowerShell guy, the changes that you have set, the maximum, the mailbox you can move at a time. Do you know whether that actually makes it change for all cache servers in this site, or just
No, that's in Office 365.
it's at Office?
Office 365, yeah. Yep. So that would be the yeah.
Because in our case,
CAS server in Office 365.
in our case, on-premise, so we have to make the MRS settings
Yep.
on a cache server.
Yep.
Is that something we still have to do?
Yeah, the MRS proxy, you still need to enable that. That's still a requirement for migration specifically, not for hybrid configuration. But when you want to start moving mailboxes across, then you have to enable MRS proxy on-prem. Yep.
Okay, right.
All right. So another thing that we've changed, and this has been there for a while, about a month now, I guess, is we've disabled. So when you log on to the Office 365 portal, and if you haven't verified a domain yet, there's no way to enable directory synchronization. The reason for this is if you enable directory synchronization without adding a domain in Office 365, by default, your users will get the contoso.onmicrosoft.com domain, right? So they won't be able to log on as your own domain, like user@contoso.com in Office 365, because that domain hasn't been validated yet. And it's an extra step, I guess. It's not too hard to change the UPN back to the proper domain, but it's an extra step in your migration process. So we've disabled that. So you need to make sure that you add that domain first, and then enable directory synchronization. I believe this was asked a while ago. Do I need to upgrade to Exchange 2013? So if you're already on Exchange 2010, which most of you already have, do you need to upgrade to Exchange 2013, right, to set up hybrid deployment? The short answer is it depends. The long answer is, if you've got Exchange 2010 hybrid, are you happy today? If you say yes, stay in 2010, right? You don't have to relearn, new skills. 2013 is a totally different animal as well, different console, different. But you're not happy. Do you need new features? Maybe you're not happy because you need new features. If you say no, just stay on 2010. If you don't need any new features, just stay there. If you need new features, are you really sure? Right? Are you really sure that you want to add this new server version because of those new features, right? So if you're really, really sure, just, these are some of the reasons why people would be using 2013 is they've got multiple forests or multiple Exchange organizations. So if you've got multiple forests, then you need Exchange 2013 if you want to use OAuth. If you want to use the transport-based, TLS application, so if I'm sending to this email address, TLS has to be applied, then it's only available in Exchange 2013. So essentially, if you want the new features in Exchange 2013, then upgrade. Otherwise, if you just want to move to Office 365, stay with Exchange 2010. That's fine. It's supported. All right. So I guess that's the simple answer there. If you're planning to move to 2013 on-premises anyway, just, go ahead. But otherwise, just stay there. All right, sizing guidance. So the sizing hasn't changed much. Use the Exchange calculator. If you've got Exchange 2010, Exchange 2013, use the calculator. There's a Technic article. There's a blog post as well from the Exchange team, which talks about the nitty-gritty details of how to calculate the IOPS and the CPU cycles per second, the memories and all, but just use the Exchange calculator. Hybrid is not a special role, so it's running CAS and Mailbox, and it doesn't change, right? The way you size the CAS and Mailbox would be exactly the same for the hybrid servers. Another thing to think about is as you move mailboxes out of your on-premises environment, it offloads gives some space, right? Some CPU memory and disk space in your on-premise environment. Maybe you don't need additional servers. Maybe your existing servers can handle the load. Mailflow is quite important as well because if you're doing centralized routing, then that's gonna add additional load on your hub transport role. So just make sure that you take that into consideration. And the key thing here is migration is the one that takes a lot of load on your servers. So if you're doing your migrations off hours, so there's multiple options here, right? So you can add additional servers. If you're in Exchange 2010, you could add additional Exchange 2010 servers, or you can add a different set of servers running Exchange 2013 or Exchange 2010, or just leave it as is and do your migrations during off hours so that no one's going to be impacted. All of these scenarios are fully supported. It's up to you on which way you want to go, depending on your migration approach. Decommissioning your Exchange server. So everything's moved to the cloud. All your mailboxes are there. The most common question I get asked is, can we turn off our Exchange server on premises? Can we uninstall it, remove it, and we'll just use the services in the cloud? So there are three considerations here. Well, three options. If you want to keep the cross-premises environment where you've got mailboxes on premises and you've got mailboxes in the cloud, then you need to keep the Exchange servers and the hybrid configuration. So if you remove the federation, the org relationship, then you won't be able to move mailboxes across, and you wouldn't have that rich coexistence anymore. If you want to keep your Exchange server and remove hybrid, you can do that. So you could still use your Exchange for recipient management, but you don't have any mailboxes anymore in your Exchange environment. And then the third consideration here is remove everything, right? Remove the hybrid configuration, remove all my on-premises Exchange. We're all in the cloud, right? So nothing's going to be left. You can only do this if you're no longer using directory synchronization, okay? If you remove your Exchange server and you run dirsync, what's going to happen there is, because the source of authority is your on-premises Active Directory, right? When you uninstall Exchange, it's going to remove the Exchange attributes as well, and that gets synchronized in the cloud. And, and you know what's going to happen there, right? So you don't want to do that. So if you're using DirSync, make sure you leave at least one Exchange server in your on-premises environment. If there's one takeaway for this session, that's it. Yeah. You can turn it off because, yeah, that's a good point. You can turn it off because by turning it off, it's not going to remove those attributes in Active Directory. Yep. But make sure you don't uninstall it. Because when you uninstall your last Exchange server, that's going to clean it up. That's going to clean up Active Directory as well. Yep. Oh, great question. Yeah, hybrid server is actually free. Do you know that? You don't have to pay for a license for the hybrid server. Good point. As long as it's being used for hybrid deployment. Yep, yep, yep. No, just for hybrid. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. But yeah, great question. All right, so just a simple matrix here. So if you've got DirSync enabled, oh, sorry, how does this work? So if you've got DirSync deactivated, you could remove both. Yep, that's the key one. If you've got Exchange only, you still have DirSync, you're still using ADFS, you're still using password sync. If you've got both Exchange and hybrid, then you could use it for public folders, for example, offboarding, secure mail, and all. I think that's the last one. All right. Any more questions? Yes, sir?
Are you able to move the users back onto on-prem?
Yes, yep. So that's the beauty of the hybrid deployment. You can onboard and offboard anytime. Yep.
Just start with quickly what you said, the hybrid license. Hybrid license is free.
Yep.
That server is also going to be a mailbox server as well, and that's still covered.
So when we say hybrid server, ideally you wouldn't have any production mailboxes in there. There would be some test mailboxes, I guess. But if you start putting production mailboxes in there and users are actually connecting to that server, then it's violating that free license, I guess. So yeah, it just needs to do the hybrid role for that free license. Yeah.
To do with hybrid setup and delegation, shared mailboxes. So say I've migrated to shared mailbox to the cloud, and have the two who are delegates on-prem.
Yep. Good question. This is a common problem as well. So if I've got 2 minutes left, so I guess this would be the last question. I'll be available around, so if you've got any other question, just grab me. But shared mailboxes, right? So if I'm a manager, I've got a PA, right? And my personal assistant would have full delegation rights on my mailbox. We need to make sure that both of us are migrated to Office 365 at the same time. Otherwise, that's going to break the delegation. So if my mailbox gets moved to Office 365, my PA won't have access to it anymore. And that's an Exchange Active Directory limitation. And there's nothing that the hybrid configuration wizard can do about that. So the key thing here is togetherness. When you move mailboxes to Office 365, you need to make sure that you're moving the people in the same department or that are working together where they've got delegations. There's a script out there as well. So if you want to find out quickly how many mailboxes are actually shared or delegated to different users, run that script. Make sure that when you create your migration batches, you move them all at the same time. All right. I think we're out of time. Thanks everyone for your time. I'll be hanging out if you've got any questions. Thank you.